I have with me today Vlada, the filmmaker for Well Actually. And I'm so happy to have you here today. Your film, I feel, is so appropriate for our festival and our audience. I've definitely had similar conversations with some of the women that I work with in the tech world, as portrayed in the movie. So, Vlada, please share a little bit about yourself and just where the inspiration for this film came about. If was this from personal experience, from somebody that you knew, please share.
Yeah, thanks. So happy to be here. Thanks for including my short film in your festival. It's really great, and as you said, it is very relevant to that general area that you're in. So yeah, I'm Vlada Knowlton. I'm a writer, director, producer of Well Actually, the short film. And it actually, so my background is that before I became a filmmaker, I worked for Microsoft. I was in the tech industry for a while. And my husband also worked at Microsoft. He was there for much longer, I think almost around 24 years or so. Anyway, so between the two of us, we have lots of friends and lots of experience in the tech industry. And lots of different companies. And we're in Seattle, so we're sort of surrounded by tech here.
Very cool. Oh my gosh.
Personally and just in general, where we live. So that's kind of the background there. I have plenty of sort of knowledge and experience there, but also, on a personal note, being a woman in the tech industry when I was there, and it's not just tech. I was in academia before tech. I have a lot of experience, sort of just with the general sort of. I don't want to speak too harshly about it, but there's lots of sexism and biases against women in these sorts of industries, that the challenges they need to deal with. And this is even worse for women of color, for Black women. We've been dealing with these challenges for decades, and everybody is aware of them, and everybody knows about them. Microaggressions, just kind of sexist assumptions, and we deal with them daily. And I dealt with them when I was working at Microsoft. My husband, who's just a really great ally, and did everything in his power to try to get more women to kind of get more visibility and get more promotions and sort of climb up the ladder. He was very much aware of it all the decades that he worked there, and we've shared many stories. And so this story of Well Actually, which actually came from a feature script that I had written, a feature film screenplay, which the producer of the film, Susan LaSalle, and the cinematographer, Lulu Gargiulo, and we were trying to develop the feature for a while. So that started with sort of a story about a woman in the tech industry, a woman of color. And then we decided, while we were trying to develop that sort of larger, heavier project, I decided to write a short to kind of, almost as a proof of concept for that larger project. And so that became Well Actually, the short. And it was just about, a very basic sort of like perfunctory kind of thing that a woman software engineer, and in my short, she's a Black woman software engineer, kind of deals with, just a meeting with her team members, right? And the things that are in the film, to some people who haven't dealt with that kind of situation, it may look a little over the top. But the funny thing is that all the things that happen in that film have actually happened in real life to either me, or my husband has seen them and witnessed them, or to friends of mine, and they're all just real scenarios. And when I've shown this film, and as you can, as you all yourself mentioned, whenever women who are in tech or the corporate world watch this film, the reactions are like, oh my God, I couldn't sit still. I've been there. This happened to me. This is crazy. I've had the same conversations, so those things really resonate and push buttons.
Well, it's so funny because, there was that TV show Silicon Valley, that came out that was really popular. And, it's so funny because a lot of people think that, no, like surely there can't be people that are like that. But I think people just don't understand that in this world, there are a ton of people where they're just not really socially aware, I think. And so it's like, I don't even know if they mean to behave in that way, but they do behave in that way. And it does definitely come across as offensive. But it's like, it's funny because I also know some of these people that are offensive. And like, I just think that they're really that oblivious. They just really are. So it's like, it's so interesting interacting with those people and being friends with those people, and then just having to work with them and then just calling them out, and it's just, it makes for such an interesting work dynamic, right? When you're having to deal with these situations regularly. So I guess like my question to you, especially because, you and your husband have both worked in the tech world, what do you think is like the right way for those people who just are genuinely like, they're just genuinely, there's something missing, in the social aspect, like they mean no harm by their behavior. It's like, how do you confront them in a way? Because if you confront them too harshly, then they start being like, they get offended and they're like, oh my gosh, why is this person yelling at me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they like turn it around on you because they genuinely think that, they didn't mean anything by the way that they behaved or things that they said.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is tough, but it is absolutely sort of fixable. I mean, it really is, and we have the tools for it. The problem is that not enough people are willing to take the steps and the energy and the effort it takes to fix these kinds of things. And one of the first steps is kind of visibility, awareness, and education. And that's why I think, films like these, stories like these are important, and making them also have like sort of a little comedy and a little levity sort of associated with them helps not make it too sort of aggressive or too scary for people who are trying to deal with, changing themselves and their behaviors. So it's just about, really, it's as simple as people becoming more aware. I mean, these are learned behaviors, and learned behaviors become habits, and habits are sort of become these sort of unintentional, natural, instinctive behaviors. And so when people do that, when men keep saying to a woman, are you sure? Every time she says something, a fact, something that she certainly should be quite sure about because she's an expert, that kind of behavior of constantly questioning a woman's expertise, that's a habit. And men, men in the tech industry kind of learn these habits, and then they think that it's perfectly acceptable when they're not checked, when, in the time, right, in the time when they're being performed. So, checking those habits, kind of gently pointing out, like, why would you be questioning my expertise at this moment in time? Is this something that, you do to all your colleagues, or just me, or just
Like,
women?
is this like a personality issue? Like, do you question everybody, or are you singling me out?
Yeah, what is your reason for saying that? And that's it's unnecessary, and I find a little offensive, so please let's not do that again, that kind of thing. I think it's just important for people to become aware of these really, really bad sexist, biased habits.
Yes.
And also, racist habits. I mean, these are all problems, and people become very defensive when they're called out. But it's like, we have to keep working on it. We have to keep working on it in as polite, I guess, and gentle way as we can, unless people, even after they're called out, they keep repeating it over and over again. And then,
yes, definitely.
You point out that this is in fact a you problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just these are just really terrible racist, sexist, you name it, kind of habits that we really need to talk about and make people more aware of. And that's why I think it's really funny and cool when I see, like, online, Twitter, or wherever else, people keep mentioning these very same things that I put in the film, like, like singling out a woman in a meeting, saying, hey guys, and then pointing at her and saying, hey, and ladies, that kind of thing. And it seems completely sort of innocent, but it's not. It's not. Singling a person out for their gender is not is not an innocent or helpful thing to do. Or saying things like, are you sure? Or, those kinds of things may seem sort of innocent and harmless, but they're not. And they build up and they create a challenge for the person that's unfair, really. These are unfair challenges that people have to face in the, you know, on a daily basis in their workplace that they really need not be facing because they have like actual work to do. So putting in the effort to have to like overcome sexist and racist challenges every day is just not helpful, not only to the person, but to the whole team.
So Vlada, I have a question for you. How did you shift from the world of tech to academia to filmmaking?
I mean, yeah, they seem unrelated, but actually this whole trajectory for me has been very related. So I've always been my whole life from an early age, I've been very much into visual storytelling. I've always been kind of a very visual person and really into films from a very early age. But, at first I went the science route for various reasons. I was really interested in cognitive science and I studied something that's very related to film. I studied visual perception and scene perception. So in grad school, I got my PhD in learning scene and visual and spatial perception, how people navigate and use visual cues in the world. So that was all very related in the end to this field. And then from graduate school, I went to Microsoft, where I actually worked on the graphics platform in Office. So also just kind of visual related stuff. Then I finally, came to a point in my life in my mid-30s where I decided, and for various reasons, this is something that I could do because my husband and I were able to pull this off. So I decided it's now or never to start doing the thing that I really want to do and have wanted to do my whole life, which is filmmaking. And so I transitioned at that time to filmmaking and, kind of never looked back. So yeah.
So you had mentioned that Well Actually is actually a proof of concept for a feature film that you had written. So are you a writer as well? Like, do you write all of the projects that okay, that's awesome. So was Well Actually the first short film that you've done, or the first actual like film project that you've done?
It's not. So as far as being a narrative, I mean, I did some shorts before I did my I made 2 documentary feature films.
Okay.
I wrote those as well. And before that, when I was kind of ramping up in my filmmaking sort of abilities or, my whole learning cycle, I was shooting some music videos and helped produce a short or 2, a couple of shorts. So I was working on shorts before, then I made a couple of feature films, which were documentaries, but now I'm going back to narrative. So Well Actually is my first narrative after the documentaries. And actually right now, the producer, cinematographer and I are actually thinking about, we're also working on developing this into a web series.
Oh,
So
yes,
we're thinking our next
absolutely.
step, yeah, because the response to this particular short has been so good
Yeah.
that people are really into the characters and the story. So we're actually thinking, we could expand the short itself and make it sort of a pilot for a little web series with the same characters. So that's what we're kind of excited to try to develop that right now.
So I have a question. Is your cinematographer, is a lot of your crew for the project, are they also based out of Seattle area?
Yeah, they
That's
are.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. We've got a good team here. The Seattle film industry is small, but it's a really great group of people, and there's just a lot of good collaborations happening here in this area. And Seattle and Washington State, they're trying to grow it. And so Lulu Gargiulo is just a really great cinematographer. We've been working together for over a decade. And Susan LaSalle is a really great producer, and they're all Seattle based. And the whole team that we had for Well Actually was almost the whole team was from Washington State in the Seattle area. So
is it one of those things where they solely do like film production, film related things, or do they also have like a job like in tech as well, like like yourself?
some of them have other jobs, but most of them do I think, solely film related work. A
Yep.
lot of them do also corporate and commercial
Yep.
type
Lots of
film
corporate
work.
out there.
There's
Lots
a
of
lot
corporate opportunities.
filmmaking happening here for, Amazon and Microsoft and things like that, and a lot of commercials being made. So yeah, a lot of these people are making a living doing film stuff here, and it's great crew.
That's great. So Vlada, you were talking about having Well Actually potentially turn into a web series. So were you thinking about having the web series be like on a YouTube channel? Like, were you thinking about creating like a YouTube channel and then just like having growing like subscribers that way?
Yeah, that's our thinking right now. I think that's probably the most feasible way to go for us. And then hopefully, if it goes well, you never know. We'll of course try to introduce it to bigger platforms. But for now, I think that's kind of the natural progression. So yeah, I think that's what we would do.
And I feel like the great thing about Well Actually is that it's actually pretty short. It's a fairly short film, and because of that, like in terms of like content, it's very like digestible. Like were you thinking of maybe having like 10-minute episodes, like each of the episodes as well? And then obviously once you grow your subscriber base, you get a lot of eyeballs like on this channel, then you could very well turn it into like, I don't know, like 20 minutes or like 25 minutes. And you could actually potentially like pitch it, as like a series, like here's our audience that we have, it's like, I feel like that would be more of like a marketing plan. It's amazing, like with films and film projects, it's like from looking at it from like a business lens, like a business perspective, you really have to kind of see it as like a startup, right? Like what are the factors, like how are we creating a product, and then what are we doing to like bring it to market? Like how are we going to distribute it? How are we going to like make our money back on this? It's just it's so fascinating. I don't think a lot of people see it that way, right? But then I feel like you have to, a part of you just has to put on like that business cap, especially because like with you, your background, having worked in a corporate environment, where you kind of like see all those different pieces kind of coming together, right? I feel like that's ideal.
Yeah, I think, it's definitely the analogy of it being a startup is I think extremely accurate. And most people, you're right, don't really understand, that it is kind of a startup getting a business off the ground. It involves all the different aspects of trying to get a business off the ground. So, and it's tough, for a creative person who just wants to work on the creative stuff like I do.
Oh, yes.
I have to force myself to put that sort of business hat on and be the producer as well, and think about the marketing and, and do the pitches and yes, and do the fundraising. But you're right. That's pretty much exactly how we're going to approach it. Right now, what I'm writing is basically 6 episodes that are going to be roughly, let's say, 12 minutes long or so. 12 pages, 13 pages, because a page is a minute. And so we'll start with that, and that many pages is actually just almost about the same length as a feature. 80-page feature roughly. But it's a lot easier to produce. We could do it on a lower budget than a feature film. So yeah, that's kind of, when you're an independent filmmaker, you got to figure out how to make it work, and have the highest production value you could possibly have on a pretty tight budget, when you don't have a big studio backing you and stuff like that. So
Definitely.
you got to get started like that somewhere, and then once we have like the kind of friends and family eyes on it who are just spreading the word on the web about this really funny series that you can find on YouTube. But then after that, we can, keep going further.
Well, you know what, I think a lot of people, and I'm going to ask some sales agents and distributors, because we are going to have a distribution panel next week with some, legit, film distributors and sales agents, right? That, distribute like multi-million-dollar projects. Like, I do want to ask them about what they think about distribution on YouTube, because the reality is a lot of people, it's so easy to just kind of like dismiss YouTube, being like, oh, you're just uploading it there and people are watching it for free. But it's like, yes, but there is this ability to make so much money on it. Like you look at the reason why, like that's the reason why there are so many YouTube influencers that quit their 6-figure paying jobs to go create content all the time, and it's like, it's one of those things where I think like I was looking into it. I think you have to have like 1,000 subscribers,
Mhm.
and then you have to have like 40,000 hours, that people have like watched on your videos. And then once you hit that threshold, you can actually start making money
You can
on the
monetize
ads.
it. Yeah,
You create like, an AdSense account, and then they literally start paying you. It's
yeah.
really incredible. And, you hear these stories about YouTubers like buying their $1 million houses in LA, like from the money they make on YouTube. And I feel like it happens a lot more than people realize, because you think about this next generation of people, like they are always on YouTube.
Yeah, they're not watching TV, that's for sure.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I feel like definitely coming up with the strategy, in that way. And, it's like one of those things too, like when you start filming, right? You have like a location and you're there, just film a whole bunch of stuff at once. And then you have like this arsenal of like content that you can just like slowly upload,
Yeah,
right? And so it's like, it's one of the, you have this like queue that you've like built up. So you're not like rushing yourself to like,
right.
have to publish, something right away. And
Yeah.
then whenever you have time, you guys can just, go and film. And I just feel like the stories within, that world, right? The well, actually world, I just feel like they're so endless. Just
It's a very rich, yeah, it's a very rich arena of content that I have years of information that I could pluck.
oh yes,
Into these stories.
absolutely.
I think it could be really fun to write these, as you can imagine if you've been in the tech industry. And it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly like Silicon Valley. There's so many different types of characters and scenarios that have not been sort of looked at and explored in that
Well, what
other
I
way.
think would be really interesting too is just like looking at, well, actually, like, what are the backstories? You know what I mean? How did these women, with these backgrounds, like come into the tech world? And I
Mhm.
feel like that could almost be like an encouragement for, other people, other women of
Yeah,
color, right? Who aren't in the
yeah,
tech world. Like, how do they get in? I'm sure that they
yeah,
want to get in, but they don't know how to get in. So it's like, I
yeah.
feel like even, having like an episode where you talk about how, the process of how somebody came into the world would be just super interesting, super educational, and it could be very like inspirational as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the main reasons that I decided to write about this topic is absolutely to inspire other girls. We have a major gender gap in the tech industry. We need more girls to feel more confident. It's not about their ability, it's about the confidence and sort of having that pipeline, having they have a higher barrier to entry just because of their gender. So giving them more inspiration, many of us should be making these stories. I think more of these movies need to be made. So yeah, that's definitely one of the main purposes for this is to inspire young software engineers who are women, non-binary people, people of color to just have the confidence to go into tech.
Yes. So,
Mhm.
Vlada, question for you. If people want to come alongside you and they want to help you just develop the series that, you're planning for, where can they find you? Like, where can they go to like get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to find me at Vlada Knowlton, just all one word, Vlada Knowlton, Knowlton, on Twitter, on Instagram. They can email me, Vlada@marymoreproductions.com. I'm also Vlada Knowlton on Facebook. Yeah, my name is kind of unique enough that it's pretty easy to find me. So so yeah, and they can also use info@marymoreproductions.com. So either Vlada or info@marymoreproductions.com. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to reach out.
Awesome. Well, everybody, I hope you go and check out Well Actually. And then, a lot of the conversations that we had today will make a lot of sense. And if you ever want to get in touch with Vlada, you know how to do so through this video. So Vlada, we hope that you enjoy the rest of the festival. It's going to kick off next week, and be sure to check out some of the panels and even like the screenwriting competition. You know, it's like the whole point of us having like the screenwriter showdown is so that our filmmakers also can connect with some of the writers, you know, the talented writers that are out there. So thank you so much for your time, and again, for sharing your project with us. And we look forward to seeing you next week at the events.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you.
You too. Bye, Vlada.
Bye-bye.